That is a very complex question, but humanity, I believe, is in search of an evolution that isn't just biological, but something that is spiritual, and that we're here to evolve as spiritual beings, not just biological beings. And through that journey, we're given the ability to choose between good and evil. And it's by choosing to do good, not inherently being good, that we become stronger souls. So there's a famous story in the Old Testament, which is kind of one of the big roots of both Christianity and Judaism, which is the story of Abraham and Isaac. So Abraham is desperately pleading to God for a son, and God finally gives him the gift of a son. And Abraham finds that Isaac is the center of his life and brings him great joy and love and makes his life complete. And then God one day comes down and commands Abraham to show his faith to God by the ultimate sacrifice, which is to sacrifice Isaac, to show that God is the most important thing in Abraham's life. So Abraham is on this rock, and he reaches back with this knife, and he's about to plunge it into Isaac's heart, and God stops him and says, "Oh, that's fine. You've proven your faith." And I think that Abraham did something very, very evil there that we are able to justify through religion. And Abraham from the start should have called BS on murdering your son for faith. I think that's how we get sort of a bunch of evil justified through religion, is we're able to say, oh, the Bible says it, or the Torah, or the Quran, and I'm going to drive a plane into a building and kill 3,000 people because it's God's will. Well, I think God's will tells us to call bullshit at the first smell of that sort of insanity. So I think Abraham was a great big jack.
So, I was arguing with a friend of mine about Hitler. My premise was that he was a brilliant man, a fascinating man, but at the root of it, he was an evil man. John Acton once said that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Hitler was in a position where his power corrupted absolutely. He did things that were unspeakable.
I think that when we're born, we act like all simple biological creatures, which is to avoid pain. And when we're young, avoiding pain is equivalent to being self-serving. We think about ourselves. We think about immediate gratification. We think about ourselves first. And I think as we age, that changes. I think we become more conscious of legacy. We become more conscious of what we're leaving behind. The way I understand your question is, what is the nature of man, when you say, what is humanity? And I think the nature of man is basically flawed. That's different than evil. But I don't think that man's nature is to be good. As we age, we're part of the maturing process is learning to delay gratification, learning to consider things beyond our own immediate needs. When we have offspring, we start thinking about them before we think about ourselves, and I think it's sort of a natural and sort of a beautiful process that as we're young, we're selfish and immature. As we age, we become more conscious and more aware and more concerned about our fellow man.
A long time ago, I was in Burma. My friends and I were working for the local government. They were trying to buy the loyalty of tribal leaders by bribing them with precious stones. But their caravans were being raided in a forest north of Rangoon by a bandit. So we went looking for the stones. But in 6 months, we never met anyone who traded with him. One day, I saw a child playing with a ruby the size of a tangerine. The bandit had been throwing them away.
So why steal them?
Well, because he thought it was good sport, because some men aren't looking for anything logical, like money. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Humanity is a tricky subject, I think, to define. But if I were to look at humanity, I would say that humans, as much as we would like them to be, I don't know that they actually are born making moral choices. I don't know if they come into this world with a sense of morality that we sometimes hope that they would have. And the reason why is because I think all you have to do is watch a child or a baby, and you'll see that they make most of their choices or decisions based on their own self-interest. So then what is it that makes us a moral species? Why do we make choices? And the vast majority of humans are moral. So what is it that makes them moral? I think it's the societal structures that we have in place which help guide humans to be a moral species. We have a legal framework that helps push us in that direction. We have religious structures in place from a wide variety of different sort of philosophical backgrounds that help push us into making moral decisions. And because of those structures, because we have a legal system and we have religious traditions that have shaped us, we end up making these sort of moral decisions. And without those structures, I think that you could argue that humans might not make the most moral choices. Instead, we would make choices perhaps based on our survival, the way that the rest of animals do. Animals don't make their choices because it's going to benefit somebody else. They make their choices so they can survive. And we make our choices based on a higher principle, and that comes from those structures that we've created. What makes us human is the fact that we make moral choices. It's really what separates us in many ways from animals. There's other animals, other species. What makes us human is the fact that we are the only species to believe that there is something greater than us, to believe that there is a higher power or force that has put us here for a specific reason. And over the thousands and thousands of years that humans have recorded their faith systems and religious beliefs, all of them have pointed towards a higher being or beings directing us to make moral choices. Those religious structures have, I think, resulted in us making moral choices. And without those religious structures, you could argue that we might not make those moral choices. In the same way that if we didn't have the legal structures that we have in place, again, we might not make the moral decisions that you fortunately see the vast majority of humanity making.